Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome everybody to Season 2, Episode 54 of the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast, where we give you our predictions, our picks, with the hopes that we help you prevail throughout the end of Week 10 and the rest of the 2022 fantasy football season. I'm your host, Nick Giacobbe. Joining me is Nick Cap. Nick, how are we feeling? We're recording right before Sunday Night Football. How are we feeling after Week 10?
Unfortunately, my Jets didn't have a game, so we couldn't win. But I guess the Bills losing is a win because Jets all of a sudden, if we win next week, we're the 1 seed in the division.
Not over Tua, though. I mean, not over the Dolphins.
We have the tiebreaker, and they're on bye. So if we win next week against New England, we take the 1 seed.
Did you guys beat them? You did beat them.
We did.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go.
And another fun fact, real quick. If Kansas City loses next week and the Jets win, the Jets are the 1 seed in the AFC, which is crazy. Crazy.
I had a miserable Sunday. It was miserable, dude. It was miserable. Anyway, we'll talk about it. But the football gods were not kind to me today. It was miserable. Anyway, we'll talk about it. If this is your first time listening to us, thank you so much. Maybe you watched our live show yesterday, which was Sunday morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. It's every Sunday, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. If you watched that show, thank you so much. And you're joining now. This is the show that we do on Mondays. We do shows on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. It's available on all audio streaming platforms and YouTube. For our Monday show, we do an injury recap or a news segment, I guess. Talk about any news coming out of that week. Then we do a weekend wrap. We give you our biggest takeaway from a fantasy perspective from each game that was played. Then we end the show with a Monday Night Football preview, giving projections for each star player. You can find the show on all audio streaming platforms, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Anchor. If you're on iTunes or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. We would appreciate that. If you'd rather watch and listen to the show, go to our YouTube channel, PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. If you're watching this video, drop a like on it. Hit that subscribe on the channel. Make sure you drop a like on any video that you watch and enjoy. Please share those links with your friends, with your league members. Keep help growing that PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. Keep connected with us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, PrimeTimeFFPod, then Facebook and YouTube, PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. Starting off with some injury news and some updates. Cooper Kupp went down with a knee injury in the fourth quarter. Beginning of the fourth quarter, he basically got overthrown by that ridiculously bad quarterback, John Wolford, who overthrew him. It was kind of a nasty hit to the leg. Did not return. The worry is that the worst injury they think it could be is a fractured fibula, which could be very, very bad. It looks like it could also be a high ankle sprain, which also isn't great. Sean McVay said after the game it did not look great or sound great. And that's all we got as of Sunday night. Your thoughts?
He's probably out for the rest of the fantasy football season. Plain and simple. That sucks, but I think that's the reality of it.
If you want to talk about my miserable Sunday, it looks like I'm going to lose 4 out of 5 fantasy matchups. In one of my teams is just dead in the water. My other 3, I'm going to face a top 2 scorer in each league. In 2 of those leagues, I am facing teams that are bottom 2 scorers on the entire season, and they decided to explode on me. In one of those leagues, I have Justin Jefferson and Cooper Kupp, and now there we go. That's the end of my season. So there we go. Miserable Sunday, guys. Very, very miserable. It's how it goes sometimes, but most weeks I could kind of regroup and say, all right, I could win a couple or whatever, but I got nothing positive to say about this one. That sucks. That absolutely sucks. I'm hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. Really bad for the Rams from a football perspective and a fantasy perspective. This makes Matthew Stafford, I think, droppable, honestly. In 10-man leagues, at least, I don't think Stafford should be rostered. I guess Allen Robinson may get a boost, but who knows? But yeah, it's very bad. Moving on, Juju Smith-Schuster went out with a really nasty concussion in the second quarter. Haven't seen an update on him yet. Hard hit. He did the 2 hands. Looked really bad. And he's been really productive the last 3 or 4 weeks. Seemed like he was coming into form. I guess he probably misses next week. But your thoughts on the possible Juju concussion? I don't think it's anything worse than a concussion, but it could be a bad concussion where he misses like 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into the game later on. But, I mean, after Juju went down, if he's out a week, maybe 2. That would probably be worst case scenario. But They had like 3 or 4 receivers go down in this game, and they still had no problem moving the ball. They had no problem being productive. I think that there's one receiver here that'll get a massive boost, who we'll talk about later.
All right. Leonard Fournette went out with a hip injury, did not return in the fourth quarter. Need to know the severity of that, but I'm not sure it's his backfield anymore. So we'll talk about that in less than 5 minutes. But yeah. Jerry Jeudy in the first quarter, he slipped on the route. There's nobody around him. He just slipped while making a cut, non-contact injury. He was carted to the locker room. It's not an Achilles injury, so I'm kind of surprised we haven't gotten an update yet. My guess is like high ankle sprain or something, but we haven't gotten an update yet. So that is one to monitor on Monday. That Broncos, I can't even talk about them yet. We'll get into it, but that Broncos offense, oh boy, we'll talk about it. Khalil Herbert had a hip injury, left in the fourth quarter, didn't return. I did note here that Cole Kmet had a knee injury in the fourth quarter. He limped off right at the end. I don't know how serious it was. Didn't say. And then Zach Ertz had a knee injury. He was carted off in the first quarter. No update on that as far as I could tell. But again, we're recording Sunday night around 8 o'clock. This is kind of what we could tell you. We'll have better updates for our Tuesday show, which comes out tomorrow. And it should be an interesting waiver wire. Moving on to our weekend wrap. We're going to recap every game of the weekend and give you our biggest fantasy takeaway. First game, Seahawks at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It started off my miserable Sunday. It really did. And here's the thing. The fun part about rooting for the Seahawks before the season started was like I had zero expectations or hope. So I was just going to be okay being miserable. But then they got good, and then I had hope. And that invokes misery when they lose. Now, I'll speak as a Seahawks fan, and then I'll let Nick give his take. They didn't look bad. I think the Bucs are an elite football team. I think they're a football team that could end up at the Super Bowl this year. I don't care how they've looked in, the start of the season. They just got to make the playoffs and get hot. They have the best quarterback in the history of histories. So to me, it doesn't matter what they've done the last few weeks. All that matters to me is they make the playoffs and they're going to get hot. The talent is impeccable on the team. The defense is super duper fast. The linebackers are fast. They have a good secondary. Receiving core is out of this world, and Tom Brady. So not a bad loss when you're losing by, I think it was 5 points or something like that. They made too many mistakes. When you face an elite team like that, you can't make a bunch of mistakes and expect to win. And they made too many mistakes, and they still almost won. They were a couple of plays away from it, but that's just what happens. So I am proud of how they showed out in the fourth quarter, and and how Geno showed out at least. So not a terrible game, but it sucks. Nick, your biggest takeaway from a fantasy perspective from this game?
So in terms of fantasy production, none of the three guys had, the three key Hawks had good games between Walker, Lockett, or Metcalf. But even in their bad game, like I know it wasn't really garbage time because they got back and they kind of hung in there for a chance to win. But in a garbage time situation, all three still managed to have a fine fantasy day. All three of them finished with at least 13 points. So none of them boomed, none of them busted. But I think it tells you that you can feel pretty comfortable starting any of these guys. I mean, I've been comfortable for a few weeks on Lockett and Metcalf, and we all know Walker has been one of the best rookie running backs in the class so far. But it just reassures me that in tougher games that they're still going to be confident. They shouldn't really be a debated flex play anymore. They should all be locked in at your flex spot unless you really do have someone that contends with them.
And I think Geno had a pretty solid day as well. I think they had
he had
like 20 fantasy
21, I think, or
yep.
2.
And garbage time is a really interesting conversation to have. Maybe not now, but was it garbage time? Because they were 2 or 3 plays away from getting the ball back. So I think I think the term garbage time has to, I don't know. It's an interesting phrase to use, but at first I thought it was garbage time, but teams take their foot off the gas. They just do. And that's a problem with most teams. My biggest takeaway is that Rachaad White is going to finish as the running back 1 on Tampa Bay. Nick put the note here. They should be rostered everywhere after this week. I've been pounding that drum for a couple of weeks now. I forget I don't think I have him rostered anymore. He's a guy I've picked up on and off for the last 2 weeks, kind of waiting on to see when the boom would happen. And I would drop him knowing that it wasn't happening yet. I may be a week too late, but yeah, he's going to be the running back 1 going forward on that team. All right, 1 o'clock games. Here's the big one. Minnesota Vikings at the Buffalo Bills. Your big takeaway. Kirk Thuggins. Kirk Thuggins.
The Kirk Thuggins it's quite the takeaway. Man, I don't even know what to make of that game. That was crazy. I mean, it was one of the most entertaining football games, probably the football game of the year so far.
Yeah, I think so.
And fantasy relevant for pretty much everybody.
Everybody, yeah.
But I mean, I don't really know what to take away. Like everybody kind of performed as best as they could. I feel like everyone performed for fantasy.
Yeah. I guess yeah. I guess my bigger takeaways is a guy I didn't expect to perform was Gabriel Davis. I know the stat line isn't correct. This is the stat line before overtime. He was at 573 for a touchdown. So good stat line there. Devin Singletary had 2 touchdowns. They're finally using him at the goal line. I don't know if that continues, but that's something to monitor. And my biggest takeaway is that PJ Hawkinson, back-to-back weeks with double-digit fantasy points to the Minnesota Vikings. He went 7 for 45, so that's one to keep monitoring. I think he's a guy you can start trusting in your lineups. He's in a better offense now. Kirk's an upgrade over Goff. The offense is an upgrade. Vikings are 8-1. They have an elite offense. That Bills defense is legit, and it was snowing or raining over there. Like this wasn't a fluke game. Like, I don't care if Josh Allen was hurt. This was not a fluke game by any means. So, yeah, they played legit, and they won that football game. The Detroit Lions versus the Chicago Bears. Your biggest takeaway?
I'm going to let you take it first because, I mean, there's a lot to unpack, and you have a lot of good notes on it.
Sure. I have Amon-Ra exploded for 10, 119. He had 22 fantasy points roughly. Without bonuses and stuff like that. And, I think that's kind of what he needed. One big takeaway that I'm seeing is I don't know how healthy DeAndre Swift is, or maybe they just don't love the talent, but I think Jamal Williams may be the play rest of the season. I think Swift is benchable at this point. And then you got to take the name away, take the draft pick away, and Jamal Williams is playing better and they're using him better. And the funny thing is, this is my original take on the Primetime Fantasy Podcast before the season last year. I was so in on Jamal Williams because of the way he was using Green Bay, because he was playing better than the lead back at times. It was a similar situation. I knew that DeAndre Swift was, injury prone. And then after Swift's phenomenal year last year, I backtracked on that take, and maybe I shouldn't have. But rest of season, I think Jamal Williams might be the better play. Which one do you want to talk about? Just say one or two on the notes here, and I'll take the other one if you want. Or you talk about both. It's up to you. I have 2 other notes here that I think are notable at least.
I want to kind of support your Lions take because I don't know if either of these running backs for me personally are startable. Jamal Williams only played 25 snaps and he outstepped DeAndre Swift. Swift played 19. Swift led them in targets and Jamal Williams led them in carries. It's a bad football team, right? Like they're playing a little bit better. They're the Washington Commanders backfield. Like that's exactly what it is. Justin Jackson had 10 routes run, like 17 snaps. They had a 4th running back play 13 snaps. Like there's 4 running backs that are getting more than 12 snaps a game and none of them exceeded 25. It's exactly what Washington is. How are you going to trust these guys just like we don't trust the Washington backfield, or we haven't for most weeks of the season? I don't know if I could trust any of them. Like quite simple. It's really, really, really bad. And they are a pass-first team because they're typically playing from behind. So It's going to be Jared Goff and Amon-Ra for most of the time. I know they find the end zone, so there's a lot of upside with Jamal Williams and his 10 touchdowns. But, I mean, we always say the word touchdown regression. I would bet on regression on the back half of the year.
Jamal Williams is this year's James Conner. I'm sticking with that one.
Exactly.
2 other points. We should definitely touch on one together. But Cole Kmet, 4 for 74, 2 touchdowns on 5 targets. This is the most on the team. He now has 5 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks, which also ties Mark Andrews for second most touchdowns by a tight end in the league. So Cole Kmet needs to be rostered now, and this was the year that people were expecting from Cole Kmet. Why don't we both talk about this one? You want to talk about it first, or you want me to?
Well, we were both on this pretty early.
Yeah.
So I'll give both of us credit for it, but we both said Justin Fields is going to be a league winner like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he's proving it. He proved it the last 2 weeks. I think he's a QB1 on back-to-back weeks. There's a very good argument he's QB1 on the rest of the season. This is back-to-back games, not only over 100 rushing yards, but over 140 rushing yards. I know he had 2 big breakaway touchdowns, but regardless of that, he's still putting up close to 100 rushing yards on top of that. He's not a great passer, and we already knew that. So whatever, but it's the same thing. He doesn't need to be the best quarterback in the world. You saw his terrible decision-making throwing a pick 6 in a game where they should have clearly won, and they blew it. That doesn't mean that shows why he might not be locked in as a future quarterback or superstar quarterback. But once again, it doesn't matter. What he's good at is good enough for fantasy, and that's all you need. It's the same reason we like Trey Lance before the year. It's the same reason we like Jalen Hurts the past 2 years, even though Hurts is proving to be a good quarterback. Same reason we like Josh Allen year 2 and year 3. Like, it's exactly what you want. So he's going to deliver for fantasy regardless of whether you think he's a good quarterback in the NFL.
I was just about to say that Justin Fields is having the season that you thought Trey Lance was going to have. This is exactly what you predicted for Trey Lance, what's happening with Justin Fields. My other thought about Fields is I don't think he's a bad quarterback at all. I don't think he's playing bad. I think he has the worst offensive line in the league. I know the defensive stats aren't bad, but I don't think the defense is that good. Trading for Claypool is okay, but they don't have an alpha dog wide receiver. They got to fix that. And as much as you don't love the Bengals, Nick, they got to do what the Bengals did. They got to find a way. They got to get the alpha dog receiver, and they got to find a way to revamp the line. Because an alpha dog receiver is changing young quarterbacks, the trajectory of a young quarterback. Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, and Josh Allen. Yeah, those 3 young quarterbacks' entire careers were changed by a young receiver or a star receiver. And without that star receiver, I don't know if any of those 3 are starting on Sundays today, and that's the reality of it. So I think Justin Fields does need that tool in his arsenal, and I think he could be a really solid starter, after that. All right. Denver Broncos at the Tennessee Titans.
Why did we have to support the thing we knew wasn't going to happen? We both did it. We both said, let's ride. Why are we riding? Why are we still riding?
Okay. After the bye, they're healthy. Bad team. The Titans are not a good team. I don't care what you say. They're not. They're not a good football team. The Broncos suck. They're bad. They're a bad football team. They're a bottom 10 football team. And Russell Wilson's a bottom 10 quarterback. I would rather have Justin Fields right now.
I agree with that 100%.
I don't know how many quarterbacks I can name right now that I'd rather have over Russell Wilson, but he's bad. There's no other word to describe it. It's really bad. So my big takeaway was that I don't want to play any receiver from either team the rest of the season. If I have to play Courtland Sutton, I might have to now because I'm gonna be without Cooper Kupp. So you know what? I may have to, but I don't want to. If I have another option, I don't want to play either receiver from any team rest of season. I want to give Treylon Burks a couple of weeks to see what happens, but I'm not a believer. I would pick him up and roster him, but I'm not a believer. I am not going out of my way to start any offensive player from either of these teams except for Derrick Henry.
That's fair. My big takeaway also has to do with the receivers on Denver side. So Jerry Jeudy went down early. We knew that. The leading snap share receiver, which is disgusting to me, and is even further proof that Nathaniel Hackett needs to be fired, was Kendall Hinton. He outsnapped Courtland Sutton and ran more routes than the rest of the game. I know it's not by much, but I mean that's ridiculous. I love Sutton. I think he's very talented, but he ran pretty much 50 routes, close to 50, and he had 10 targets, which 10 targets, 50 routes is phenomenal, but he's not going to run 50 routes consistently. This is still a run-first team. They were only passing because they couldn't run against Tennessee. No one has been able to run against Tennessee most of the year.
They do have a good front seven. I'll give them that.
They do. And, so if you're going to tell me for every 5 routes Courtland Sutton runs, he's going to be targeted once, he's probably only going to run, 35 to 40 routes a game. It's very, very bad for those receivers. I'm not comfortable with it. Sutton just had a first double-digit game. I think you can probably sell high on him. Pitch the Jerry Jeudy went down.
I don't think anybody wants a Bronco, man.
I don't know, but
I think it's the cheese touch if you like the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books. Nobody wants it right now.
That's such a throwback. You just unlocked a memory in my brain.
There we go.
But yeah, that's it. I can't talk Denver anymore. I'm so sick of them.
But hey, they lost. That's a better draft pick for my Seahawks. Let's ride, baby. The Jaguars versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Your biggest takeaway from this one?
Well, I said Christian Kirk would boom. I wasn't expecting him to go nuclear like this.
What do you have, 25 points or something? He was great.
I'll pull up the exact stat line, but
while you're pulling it up,
the second best game of the season.
While you're pulling it up, the rest of the Jaguars offense stunk. ETN didn't get enough work. I don't think he scored double digits. Evan Ingram would have been close to double digits if the touchdown counted, but that idiot offensive lineman, I forget his name, but he was an eligible man downfield on the other side of the field. I think the announcers are saying like it was ridiculous that he was wherever he was. So that stunk big time. Trevor looked okay, but yeah, I mean, Zay Jones had a pretty decent day, but yeah.
So Christian Kirk had 31.5 fantasy points. That was his best game of the year. I think he had the 4th most fantasy points up until the 8:00 slate.
There we go.
So freaking great game. Good call by me. I'm gonna give myself a little tap on the back for that one because I had some bad takes this week. So I'll give myself the one I deserved. I will quickly touch on this. I did say there's a receiver I like based off all the injuries, and that's Kadarius Toney. He only had played 28 snaps, ran 17 routes, and he caught 5 balls. They also gave him 2 carries, and he looked really good. Like, he fit right into the Walmart Tyreek Hill role, and I mean, it was pretty much like night and day plugging him in. They didn't use him as much as you would want him to, but he's going to get more worked into that offense, and if those receivers are still dinged up and not playing well, like, Kadarius Toney is going to wind up becoming the wide receiver 2 on that team by the end of the year. I think he's someone that we're going to talk on waiver wire. I don't know what he's owned it in leagues, but he's way too talented to pass up on in that offense.
I wonder what his dynasty draft capital is going to be next year. That really does interest me. My other thought, Isaiah Pacheco's clearly the running back 1. He fumbled early in the first quarter. It was a really bad fumble. He literally got his cookies stolen from him. And then they give the ball right back to him the rest of the game. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 0 carries. This is why I was beating the Clyde Edwards-Helaire drum early in the season saying, don't play him. I don't want him. And I don't get it because he didn't really look bad. And Pacheco doesn't really look good. So this is one of those situations that I don't really get, but I don't know, man. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is droppable at this point. He wasn't.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah, and I hate it because he was literally the most efficient NFL running back through like 5 or 6 weeks. Like, it was ridiculous that they pretty much benched him for Jerick McKinnon and Pacheco, and neither of them have been better than he was.
That's the thing. Like Khalil Herbert's looks better.
It's not like they've been playing well. Right. Like, they're playing well fine.
Khalil Herbert's look better than Montgomery. Pollard's look better than Zeke. Jamal Williams look better than Swift. But this Pacheco thing with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, it doesn't make sense to me. So the Cleveland Browns at the Miami Dolphins. Your biggest takeaway from this one? The Dolphins are really good. I am not knocking your Jets. I am not. However,
no,
I am really excited for that Week 16 matchup because I think you guys got handed a W there. Who played for the Dolphins at quarterback? Was it
whoever it was?
Yeah, and it's not a knock.
It wound up being like 40-17.
The Dolphins offense looks explosive. I do want to see that matchup because I think that might be the tough. Well, I don't want to say that that's a tougher matchup for the Jets and the Bills, but I want to see it. I really do want to see it to see what happens with both of those teams. And I wish they had been healthy at the time. But
yeah, I agree. It would be a good football game to watch.
As a Jet fan, you got to be happy about it. As a football fan, I would have liked to see it. And I'm excited to see it in week 15, 16, whatever it is. It could affect the playoffs. That's pretty cool to me. So anyway, but yeah, the Dolphins are there for real. They're a really good football team.
I completely agree. I'm going to give myself another pat on the back because someone else from my old boom team did boom. It was Jeff Wilson. I'm going to read the stats that Nick gave me here. It's 17 for 119 and a touchdown. In the he was actually not the starter coming out for the first snap, but he did wind up out-snapping Raheem Mostert, 42 snaps to 19. He also, in the second half, out-snapped him 20-5. So Jeff Wilson pretty much shared an 80% snap share in the second half between the two of them. That's phenomenal. I called him a league winner. I said I like the upside because this offense is too electric, puts up too many points with Tua to pass on him, and it's proving true. We put him as one of our top waiver guys for the past few weeks, and I do think he's going to deliver on that league winner.
Yeah. And the thing is about both these running backs and what kind of scares me about the offense is it is the Miami 49ers. And I feel like they do ride the hot hand, and Mostert didn't look bad, and Jeff Wilson still looked better than him. So we'll see, where that goes. But other big takeaway for me is Donovan Peoples-Jones, another game over double-digit fantasy points, 5 receptions, 99 yards. I'm interested to see where this team goes with Deshaun Watson, but they got some playmakers, man. Njoku, Donovan Peoples-Jones. They traded it from Cooper. Good offensive line, Chubb and Hunt. Deshaun Watson looked really horrendous in preseason, so I don't know how he's going to look or how this team looks in a couple of weeks. But I think they face the Houston Texans on like a Thursday night or Sunday night. I don't know. It's going to be a game against the Texans, and it'll be interesting. Speaking of the Texans, Houston Texans versus the New York Giants. I think we should make this really short and sweet. For me, I wrote this note down. You might feel a bit differently. I don't want to play either receiver or any receiver from either of the two teams. I will play Dameon Pierce, Saquon Barkley, and Daniel Jones maybe in a spot start. But these teams are really fantasy irrelevant to me.
I think that's fair. The one I do want to highlight is Darius Slayton for any of the receivers in this game. Over the last 5 weeks, Darius Slayton has 4 games over 11 points. Over the last 3, he's averaging about 15 to 16 points per game. He's over the last 5, he's averaging a little over 5 targets per game. So it does look like he is the, I guess you could call him wide receiver 1 over there, but like it's not really a wide receiver type role. It's not wide receiver friendly player or team, but I do think he is rosterable, and depending on the week, you might have to play him. And I'd be more confident than him than any other receiver in this game.
All right, New Orleans Saints versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. TJ Watt makes his team different. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's an aura or something, but TJ Watt just makes this a very different football team, especially on defense. And the Saints are bad. They're really bad offensively. They really need a different quarterback. As much as I would love to joke and say that he's going to be more fun than Andy Dalton, but for these skill position players to thrive, they really are going to need a different quarterback. So any other big takeaways for you over there?
No, not really. I mean, I feel like we learned everything we already knew about the Steelers offense. Like none of them are still trustable. They're all wishy-washy. No one really boomed. And for New Orleans, I completely agree with you. Jameis is the better quarterback there. I would be worried for Kamara because Kamara has not had a good fantasy day over the last 2 years in games with Jameis Winston. But I think the team overall is going to need him. So maybe try and sell Kamara because I do think there's a chance Winston does come back to that team as a starter.
All right. The Indianapolis Colts versus Las Vegas Raiders with a new quarterback, Jeff Saturday. Jonathan Taylor was excellent, and he was on my all-boom team. He went 22 for 147 and a touchdown with 2 receptions. This is what they need to do. That's the bottom line. This is the guy that you drafted. This is the guy that they drafted. Just use him. Give him 20 carries a game, and you should control the clock and win some football games. That's all I got from the Colts side of the ball. So what's your biggest takeaway?
No, I completely agree with that. I can't believe how much better the Colts offense looked with Saturday. They made the right decision. Matt Ryan should be the starting quarterback over there. I don't care about Sam Ehlinger. He was drafted as a backup quarterback in later rounds for a reason. And Taylor winded up putting up his best game of the entire season since week 1, at least. And most importantly, I know it was only 2 catches, but he doesn't really get used in the passing game as much as he should have in the first half of the year. I know he had 2 good games in the passing game, but for the most part, he hasn't been relevant in the passing game, which is somewhere where he was on the back half of last year, which made him the RB1 and the consensus RB1 for this year.
Yep.
So I think Saturday, I don't know if he's going to be good. I don't want to take too much away from a Raiders matchup against Josh McDaniels, but it was probably a better team moving forward, probably a better matchup, and probably going to be a lot better for Jonathan Taylor.
My other takeaway is I do want to give a small apology to Josh McDaniels. Good job, man. 20 carries for Jacobs. He had 78 yards, a touchdown, and 6 receptions. That's what we want from Josh Jacobs. With that said, he's still a really, really bad head coach and should be fired like today.
Yep.
But hey, he started to use Josh Jacobs for trending in the right direction. Dallas Cowboys versus the Green Bay Packers. Pretty fantasy friendly game. I didn't really expect that. So what was your biggest takeaway from this one?
I mean, every Cowboys player played well. And Christian Watson is going to emerge on that team. They did use the first round draft pick, and he just returned from injury. And Aaron Rodgers trusted him. I know he only had 4 catches and 3 touchdowns, so it might look like a fluke with the 100+ yards, but he had 8 targets. And if you were watching the game, like Rodgers was looking his way for his first and second read for most of the game. So Watson's going to get more trust in Aaron Rodgers as the season goes on. again, we liked Romeo Doubs because we said he could be a league winner. He could wind up emerging as Aaron Rodgers' favorite receiver. Christian Watson has just as much upside now.
I'll pick him up. I won't start him.
I agree with that.
Okay. Update on Zach Ertz. Just got a Fantasy Life notification. Cardinals tight end Zach Ertz, spotted in a brace after Arizona's win, is expected to miss multiple weeks with a knee injury, except for today. Per source, the team does suspect that his ACL is intact. However, Ertz will undergo an MRI on Monday to determine full extent. So there you go. Okay, Arizona Cardinals. Speaking about them versus the Los Angeles Rams. This is before the injury. I want to talk about this real quick. I was right about Cooper Kupp and that he was going to really suffer from this one. And again, say what I said last week. He's a good NFL receiver. He's not a game-changing NFL receiver for a quarterback. He's not a Tyreek Hill that's going to change Tua. He's not a Stephon Diggs that's going to help out Josh Allen. He's not a game-changing NFL receiver. Matt Stafford was a game-changing quarterback for him. And I'm going to stick by that one. When you get 25 targets a game, your stats are going to get padded. He still has to get open, still has to run routes. Don't get me wrong. He's still talented, but when you have that kind of volume, it does kind of help. So Kupp's obviously out a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe the entire season. So maybe it's not a big takeaway for the rest of the season, but I do want to state that if Matt Stafford isn't his quarterback at some point in his career and doesn't have a good quarterback, I'm not sure how fantasy relevant Cooper Kupp is, if I'm being honest with you. What's your big takeaway?
James Conner had his best game of the season, and I know I haven't really been pounding this recently, but at the start of the year, I said, it's very hard for most running backs to deliver with mobile quarterbacks because their first read is, let me go run, let me not go check down. You either need high touchdown upside and being an elite offense to be startable, or you need to be an elite runner like Dameon Pierce or Nick Chubb, or if you're not using the passing game, you can deliver on that. And James Conner, with a non-mobile quarterback, winded up getting those checkdowns, winded up getting those goal line rushes, and he delivered his best game of the season. So if Kyler Murray's injury does linger and it is a hammy issue that goes on for weeks, I don't think it will be because it was a game-time decision.
Yeah.
But if it does, James Conner is going to be a much better play than if he was not with Kyler.
And not for nothing, those receivers didn't suffer. Hopkins had a really good day. He's still quarterback proof. Rondale Moore had a good day. And the Cardinals looked like a more efficient team with Colt McCoy than they did with Kyler Murray. Just saying that one. So, yeah. All right. Those are all the games we have to talk about. Let's go into a Monday Night Football preview. We're going to do projections, for each of the star players in the game, tell you over-unders, and give you your preview for Monday Night Football. All right, Eagles and the Commanders. Jalen Hurts, 23.1 points.
It's a high line, but I'm still taking the over. He's averaging more points per game than that, and he just played Thursday Night Football last week. He pretty much gets like a mini bye in between. He should have no problem going over this number.
I say it all the time. This is just one of those guys I'll always take the over because I'd rather be wrong about it than right. Taylor Heineke, 14.3.
I'm going to go with the over as well here. I think they're going to be playing from behind most of the game. He'll have a lot of passing opportunity. So with volume will come those points. I'm not saying he's a boom player, but to cover 14 should be pretty easy for an NFL quarterback.
Yeah, I'll go right around 14. When Carson Wentz faced them week 2, he was in garbage time, got like 20 points or something like that. How about A.J. Brown at 16.8?
I'm going to go with over again here. Like AJ, well, again, it's pretty much a mini bye week that they get. And this team's been way too good to take the under on the star player. So I'm going to go with over.
I'll go right at 15. He's been really productive the last few weeks. Is due for a down game at some point. I'll go slightly under at 14 or 15. How about his partner in crime, Devontae Smith, at 12?
I think this is a great line for him. I'll probably go slightly under. I do think AJ Brown will be, he always appears to be more dominant in the easier matchups than Devontae Smith does.
Yeah, I'm going to go the over, actually. The last time he faced Washington, he had 30 fantasy points. He had 169 yards and a touchdown. I feel like he torches Washington again because they're going to try to cover A.J. Brown, and then they have Devontae Smith on the other side. Let's go to the Washington side of the ball. Terry McLaurin, 13.4.
I'll go with over. Same thing. Don't expect a boom, but off sheer volume alone, he should be able to hit this.
I think I busted him week 3 when he faced him. He had 16 fantasy points, so I'll go with the over here. How about Curtis Samuel at 10?
I'll go with the over here as well. Like I said, I think volume is going to be key for here. Samuel's the decisive wide receiver 2 over there, and he's getting a lot more targets than you would think he was getting. So I'll take him off the volume again.
Yeah, I think 11 points is easy to get. So I'll go with over. How about Miles Sanders, Nick's favorite running back in the league at 12.7?
I'm going to go with over again here. I know I'm taking over on a lot of these guys, but I just think it's an over game. I think Eagles go up early. Washington's playing from behind, and they get the volume on the passing. So that should be good.
They love running from inside the 5, so I'll go with the over. Antonio Gibson at 11.9.
I'll go with the over here as well. He's been the passing down back, and like I said, if they're down early and they're checking down, they're passing the ball, Gibson's going to get 5-6 catches in this game.
I think he's closer to 10, so I'm going to go under. How about Brian Robinson right at 10?
I'm going to go under. Philly's been way too good against running backs, and pure not against the running back position, but against running the football, and that's all Brian Robinson does.
Yep, I'll go with under as well. All right, I only put one tight end here because Logan Thomas to me is fantasy irrelevant at the moment. I have Dallas Goedert at 11.9. What do you think?
I need him to go off, so I'm going to speak it into existence and say he goes for 20.
I'll speak it into existence for you as well, and he'll go over.
Thank you.
All righty, guys. Thank you for listening. That was our show for Monday. Hopefully, we gave you some helpful information coming out of your Week 10, and we could help bring you into Week 11 and that playoff push. So, if you enjoyed the show and you're listening on an audio streaming platform like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. We'd appreciate that. If you're watching the show on YouTube and you enjoyed this, please drop a like on the video, hit that subscribe, share all the links with your friends so they can all check out the Primetime Fantasy Podcast, share it with your league mates. Want to spread the love and grow the show. Keep interacting with us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, PrimeTimeFFPod, Facebook, and YouTube Primetime Fantasy Podcast. You'll hear from us tomorrow, Waiver Wire Tuesday. A lot of news I'm sure we're going to have to talk about with a lot of these updates, and the waiver wire could get a bit hectic with some of these guys, going down for injury. So we'll see where that goes. Thank you guys for listening. Enjoy Monday Night Football tonight for Week 10.